All right, so today we're diving into The Lean Startup, this book by Eric Ries.
Oh, yeah. Great book.
Yeah, you actually sent it our way. And, I got to say, at first glance, the title...
It does sound...
It sounds a little, like a businessy kind of dry.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, but don't let that fool... This isn't just some manual.
Right.
It's really about a whole new way of thinking.
It is, yeah.
About how to build, successful businesses. And get this, it's not just for tech companies.
No, not at all.
We're talking about everything from pizza to Intuit. The principles can apply across the board.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that's so fascinating about this book is how Ries really kind of expands our idea of who an entrepreneur is, right?
Hey.
We think of like the classic Silicon Valley,
In the garage.
Yeah, exactly. In the garage, startup.
Yeah.
But he's saying, no, entrepreneurs are everywhere. And it's anyone who's creating something new in the face of uncertainty. And that's kind of the key, right? Uncertainty.
Okay, got it. So not just following a recipe, but really venturing out into the unknown.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, it's not about...
You're saying this book, it could apply to
Oh, yeah.
like someone me.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it this way. If you're, at work, you're facing a challenge.
Right.
And the solution isn't totally clear.
Right.
You kind of have to experiment to figure things out as you go.
Yeah.
Boom. You're in lean startup territory.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this could be relevant, but let's get specific, right? Ries, he talks about achieving failure and building a terrible product first.
Yeah.
How does that even work?
Well, it's all about what Ries calls validated learning, right? So the idea is that startups, and really any project that's facing, a lot of uncertainty, they exist to learn how to build a sustainable business or project or whatever it is you're working on.
All right.
And sometimes the fastest way to learn is to make mistakes.
Oh.
But you got to do it in a controlled way.
So making mistakes on purpose.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's more about...
Intrigued.
Yeah. So it's more about setting up these experiments, right? Where you're like, okay, let's test this assumption and see if it's true.
Got it.
And if it's not, great, we learned something.
Oh, okay.
We failed, but we failed quickly.
Okay.
And we can adjust course.
Yeah, I like that. So do you have a story and example of this?
Yeah, actually, there's a great story about Ries's own company, IMVU.
Okay.
They had this idea. They thought it was brilliant for an instant messaging add-on.
Okay. All right. Sounds pretty straightforward. What could go wrong?
Well, it flopped.
It flopped
hard. And the reason it flopped is so insightful because they assumed that people would want to use this add-on with their existing friends.
Right.
But it turns out what people really wanted was to use IMVU to make new friends.
Oh, so their assumption about what people wanted was totally off.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's not just enough to build a cool product.
Yeah.
You really have to make sure it solves a problem people actually have.
That's exactly right.
That's a big takeaway right there.
Yeah, and that's what brings us to one of the core principles of the lean startup, right? Which is building to learn, not just to execute.
Okay, so every product, every feature, treat it like an experiment.
Exactly.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's all about testing your assumptions.
Okay, so how do we actually put this into practice?
Well, that's where the minimum viable product comes in, the MVP.
The MVP.
It's all about getting your product or your idea out there in front of customers as quickly as possible to start getting feedback.
Okay, I love that. Speed and learning.
That's it.
So you're telling me, even a simple blog could be an MVP?
Absolutely, yeah. Think about Groupon. Their MVP was just a simple blog.
Oh, wow.
Offering 2 pizzas for the price of 1.
Okay.
No fancy website, no complex infrastructure.
Right.
Just a basic experiment to test if there was even demand for this kind of thing.
And clearly there was.
Yeah.
I mean, Groupon became huge. So that simple blog, it helped them really validate their assumptions before they put a ton of money into a big fancy platform.
Exactly.
So what you're saying is don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Just get something out there.
And see what happens.
Okay, this is making me think. What's a small experiment I could run to test my own riskiest assumption? Okay, got to jot that down. But let's say we have our MVP. We're getting feedback. Then what?
Then it's all about iterating, right? You're making these small adjustments based on what you learn.
Okay.
And Ries actually uses this really interesting analogy about stuffing envelopes with his daughters.
Okay.
Comparing single-piece flow versus batching.
Right.
And it's counterintuitive.
Yep.
But doing one envelope at a time, getting that immediate feedback is actually faster in the long run.
Hold on. I'm used to batching things up to be efficient.
Right.
You're telling me I should be doing things one at a time instead.
Well, think about it this way, right? Imagine you're stuffing 100 envelopes.
Okay.
And you seal them all up before checking for errors.
Okay.
Now imagine you seal one, check it, realize you made a mistake.
Yeah.
You got to unseal 99 envelopes.
I see your point.
Right. Versus checking each one as you go.
Yeah.
Small batches, they allow you to identify problems early on.
Right, catch them early.
Before they snowball.
Okay, yeah. Small batches, rapid feedback. It's all about catching those mistakes early. But isn't stopping to fix every little issue kind of inefficient?
Well, that's where it gets kind of counterintuitive.
Okay.
Think about Toyota and the Amdon cord.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this.
Right. Any worker can stop the entire production line if they spot a problem.
Seems crazy.
Seems crazy to halt everything for a small issue, right?
But you're going to tell me it's actually more efficient in the long run?
Exactly. Fixing that small problem right away prevents it from becoming a big, costly problem later on.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what Ries calls the large batch death spiral.
Ooh, the death spiral.
Right. Where these small issues, they kind of fester and multiply, leading to delays and wasted resources.
We've all experienced that.
Yeah, stuck in a bureaucratic process where fixing one small thing takes forever.
Ugh, don't even get me started. Okay, so we're talking small batches, constant feedback, avoid the death spiral. This is already a lot to digest.
It is.
I'm ready for more. What else does Ries have for us?
Well, have you ever wondered how some companies just achieve this explosive, overnight growth? How do they do it?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Right. Think about Hotmail.
Hotmail.
The original email giant.
Yeah.
They managed to acquire millions of users with this one simple but brilliant tactic.
Okay, I'm all ears.
They added this little line to every email signature that said, "Get your free email at Hotmail." Just like that, every email they sent, they were spreading the word.
So simple.
And their user base exploded.
They're so clever. I never even thought about that. Email signatures, who knew, right?
Right.
But that was back when email was new. Does that kind of viral growth still work today?
Oh, absolutely. It's a prime example of what Ries calls the viral engine of growth.
Okay.
And it's still super relevant.
Wow.
I mean, think about companies like TikTok, Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
They've grown like wildfire through sharing, network effects, all that.
Okay, so how do we measure this viralness? Is there some secret formula?
There is. It's called the viral coefficient.
Ooh, the viral coefficient.
And it measures basically how many new customers each existing customer brings in.
Okay.
So think about it this way. Imagine each customer invites 2 friends to join, right? And then each of those friends invites 2 more.
Right.
That's a viral coefficient of 2.
2.
And that leads to that exponential growth.
So it's like a chain reaction. One person tells 2, then 4, and it just keeps going.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see the power of this. But viral growth isn't the only way to build a successful business, right?
Right. There are other engines that Ries talks about.
Yeah.
But before we dive into that, I think it's important to touch on this crucial decision point that every startup faces.
Okay.
Pivot or persevere.
Pivot or persevere. Okay, that sounds intense. Break that down for me.
So you've built your MVP, you're getting data, you're learning.
Right.
But what if the data's telling you that your initial assumptions were wrong?
Oh, boy.
That's when you have to make the tough call.
Yeah.
Do you stick with your original plan? Or do you make a significant change based on what you've learned?
That sounds like a make or break moment. How do you know which way to go?
Well, Ries gives us a framework for navigating this dilemma.
Okay.
He talks about different types of pivots. You might pivot your customer segment or your customer need or even your entire platform.
Wow.
It's about being willing to adjust your course based on the evidence.
So it's not about giving up on your vision.
Right.
It's about finding a better path to achieve it.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
But how do you know when to pivot?
It's all about paying attention to the data.
Okay.
Being honest with yourself about what's working and what's not.
Yeah.
Ries actually shares this great story about a company called Votizen, which started as a social network for voters. And they pivoted multiple times.
Multiple times.
Yeah, each pivot based on the data they were gathering.
So they didn't just switch things up once. They kept iterating.
Exactly. And each pivot was faster and more informed than the last. They started by pivoting their customer segment than their customer need. And finally, they landed on the self-serve platform that really took off.
This idea of pivoting really resonates with me. We often talk on the show about, the importance of being adaptable in a changing world.
Yeah.
And this is a perfect example of that in action.
It is. And, Ries emphasizes that product market fit isn't like this magical endpoint. It's a process of continuous adaptation and evolution.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot where your product meets a real market need. And that sweet spot might shift and change as you learn and grow.
Right. I'm starting to see how all of these concepts connect.
Yeah.
Building to learn, testing assumptions, pivoting when necessary. It's a whole new way of approaching, business and innovation.
Exactly. It's a mindset shift. Moving away from that rigid planning towards a more iterative, experimental approach.
Okay, so we've talked about validated learning, building MVPs, pivoting. What other nuggets of wisdom does Ries have for us?
Well, let's circle back to those engines of growth we mentioned earlier. Remember Hotmail and their viral engine?
I do, yeah.
Ries actually outlines several different engines that can drive sustainable growth.
Ooh, different engines. Tell me more. I'm guessing viral isn't the only one.
You guessed right. Aside from viral, there's the paid engine, the sticky engine, and the paid engine.
Okay, so break those down for me.
So the paid engine, that uses advertising and marketing to acquire customers.
Okay, makes sense.
The sticky engine, that focuses on customer retention.
Keeping them coming back for more.
Exactly. And then the paid engine, that relies on, you guessed it, paid acquisition channels.
So it's about choosing the right engine for your specific business model.
Exactly.
But how do you know which one's right for you?
Well, it depends on a lot of factors. Your target audience, your product, your budget.
Right.
But the key is to understand the dynamics of each engine.
Okay.
And choose the one that best aligns with your overall strategy.
This is making me think about, my own work, We're always looking for ways to grow our audience. And maybe we need to think more strategically about which engine we're using.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway.
This has given me a lot to chew on.
That's the beauty of the lean startup.
Yeah.
It gets you thinking differently about how you approach your work. It's not just about building a product or launching a campaign. It's about building a system that's designed for learning and growth.
A system for learning and growth. I love that.
Yeah.
It sounds a lot more dynamic and engaging than just sticking to a rigid plan,
Absolutely.
But this is a lot to process. We've covered so much ground already.
We have.
Is there anything else we should touch on before we wrap things up?
Yeah, there's one more concept I think we should touch on. It's called innovation accounting.
Innovation accounting.
Yeah, it's all about how you measure your progress.
Okay.
But in a way that focuses on learning, not just execution.
So it's not just about tracking website traffic or sales numbers.
Right. It's about tracking metrics that really reflect how much you're learning, how well your product is meeting customer needs.
Okay.
And Ries argues that, traditional accounting metrics, they can be kind of misleading for startups.
Especially early on, right?
Yeah, especially in those early stages.
Yeah, when it's more about testing assumptions and finding product market fit.
Exactly. So how do you actually measure innovation?
Right. Good question.
Well, it's about identifying these actionable metrics that help you validate your assumptions or invalidate them.
Okay.
For example, instead of just tracking total users, you might track the percentage of users that are engaging with a specific feature that you're testing.
So it's about getting granular and tracking metrics that are directly tied to your learning goals.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing this ties back to those MVPs we talked about.
Absolutely. You use your MVP to gather the data.
Right.
And then you use innovation accounting to analyze that data and make decisions about your next steps.
Okay, I like that. Do you have an example of how this works in the real world?
Yeah, Ries gives this great example of Grocket, this online test prep company.
Okay.
And they were initially using what we call vanity metrics.
Vanity metrics, okay.
Total users, page views. Right.
But they weren't seeing the growth they expected.
So they had lots of activity, but it wasn't translating into real progress.
Exactly, yeah. And it wasn't until they started tracking the right metrics,
okay,
the ones that reflected actual learning and customer engagement, that they were able to identify the flaws in their strategy and make changes.
So it's about looking beyond those surface level numbers and really understanding what's driving customer behavior.
Exactly.
I can see how this would be valuable for any business, not just startups.
Oh, absolutely. Innovation accounting is about replacing those gut feelings and hunches with hard data, with rigorous experimentation.
Okay.
It's about making decisions based on evidence, not just intuition.
This is giving me a whole new perspective on how, we track progress and make decisions at work, but data is only useful if you know how to, interpret it, right?
Right.
How do you make sense of all that information and actually turn it into, actionable insights? That's where this lean startup methodology really shines. Ries provides this framework for analyzing data, identifying patterns, making decisions. He talks about the importance of the build, measure, learn feedback loop.
Right. Small batches, rapid feedback, constant iteration.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all starting to come together now.
It is, yeah. And to make sure you're really getting to the root of problems, Ries recommends using something called the 5 whys.
The 5 whys.
It's actually a technique borrowed from Toyota's production system.
Oh, interesting.
It's incredibly simple, but it's surprisingly powerful.
Okay, how does it work?
So you encounter a problem,
right,
and you just ask why 5 times.
5 times.
To get to the underlying cause.
So instead of just putting a Band-Aid on the problem, you're really addressing the root cause.
Exact.
Okay, I like that. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, so Ries talks about how IMBU used the 5 whys to figure out why they had this server failure. And they kept asking why until they discovered that the root cause wasn't actually a technical issue. It was a managerial one.
Interesting.
A lack of proper training for the engineers.
Wow. So the 5 whys helped them uncover this, hidden problem that they would have missed otherwise.
Exactly.
It's like detective work for your business.
It is. It is. And by addressing that root cause, in this case, improving the training program,
right,
they were able to prevent similar problems from happening again.
This is making me think about how, we solve problems at work.
Yeah.
We often just jump to conclusions without really understanding the underlying causes.
Right, right.
The 5 whys could be a game changer.
I think so too, yeah. It's a tool that can help any team be more effective at, problem solving and continuous improvement.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered so much, from validated learning and MVPs to pivoting and innovation accounting.
It's a lot.
What are some key takeaways that our listeners should walk away with?
I think the big takeaway is that the lean startup is more than just a set of tools.
Right.
It's a mindset.
Okay.
It's a way of approaching work that embraces uncertainty and uses it as fuel for innovation.
I like that.
It's about being willing to experiment, learn from your mistakes, adapt, evolve. And it's relevant for anyone, who's facing a challenge where the solution isn't clear-cut.
Right. Yeah.
Anyone who's trying to create something new.
So whether you're working on a new product, launching a new initiative, or just trying to improve your own work processes, the lean startup principles can help you be more effective, more innovative,
absolutely,
and ultimately more successful.
It's about embracing that entrepreneurial spirit, that drive to learn and grow.
And remember, it's not about having all the answers up front.
Right.
It's about having the courage to ask questions, test assumptions, and just continuously iterate your way to success.
Ries said it best. He said, the only way to win is to learn faster than anyone else.
Ooh, that's a great quote. So to our listener out there, what's your riskiest assumption right now? Could you test it with an MVP? Get out there, start experimenting, embrace the journey of continuous learning and growth. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.